welcome back to Bourbon Barrel Talk, episode number 4. With me today, I'm Scott Minton, is Craig Anthony, admin of the Louisville Bourbon Hunds. How are you doing today, Craig?
Just fine. Thank you for having me.
Good. Hey, we were started off the day. We're having a little Baker's 7 to kick off our tasting for the day, and I was, kind of making fun of myself and said that, I've had a few of my friends make comments about the fact that I only open, 3 or 4 bottles at a time. And I was asking you, your opinion on that. And I'm going to let you elaborate a little bit on how you pick which bourbon you're going to drink today.
Sure. So, and what I was saying was basically how I often find myself standing there in front of my bourbon shelf, facing a mountain of indecision about what bottle I want to crack open. And usually it's because it's something that is special, maybe hard to find, hard to replace, and I come to the realization, I've gotten into it a little too much, and now I want to save that because whatever, it's going to be costly to replace it, or I'm not going to be able to find a replacement of that. And it could be something from, a few years prior, old rip, to it's that private barrel pick of, whatever, even like Buffalo Trace, but it's so good. One that comes to mind was Keg Liquors. A good while back, they had Buffalo Trace private barrel pick, and I probably bought a case of it.
A case.
And it tastes, so Todd, the owner, did not limit, what you could buy. And he touted it as, even though it was regular Buffalo Trace, basically it was, try this. It tastes like a weeder. And it did. It was so off profile. And myself and my wife, who I'm also very blessed that she loves bourbon as much as I do, we just tore into them. And I say we bought a case and probably drank through a case in the matter of a month.
Oh gosh.
Because it was great. And so, but now it's gone.
Right.
So you have that kind of going through your head, and then you just get caught in this like indecision loop. Like, what am I going to open? Because I probably have like, 30, 40, 50 bottles open. So what I do for my wife is I keep a shelf. That's her shelf, because she feels, trepidation trying to get into my bottles. My bottles are her bottles. She's welcome to have a pour of whatever she wants, but she feels hesitant because maybe it is something that she knows I bought off secondary or that's harder to find. So usually the first question I get is this safe to drink? So this is the shelf for you.
Right.
So usually what I end up doing is just going to that shelf and just rating it, because it's, it might have things like a regular Buffalo Trace, like non-store pick. Or it might have, if there's a plentiful amount of private barrels of something I have, it might be cracking that open. Bless her heart, she will drink what I don't like just to get rid of the bottle. So that's good. But yeah, I often find it hard to...
God love her.
Right?
You found a great woman. Where did you find her?
Right. She's from Pittsburgh originally. But we met in Evansville.
I thought they were Canadian whiskey drinkers
right,
up there.
Right. So, no, we came to bourbon, I would say, in about 2000. We moved to Kentucky, and we thought we were big time going down and doing like we did the Maker's Mark tour. Our fancy bourbon was Woodford. I don't even know that we had a daily drinker. We liked Eagle Rare a lot.
Eagle Rare's a good drinker.
Yeah, we did. But if we felt like we were having something fancy, it would be when we were drinking just, plain vanilla Woodford Reserve. And I think back about that because when we lived in Louisville from 2000 to 2008, it was right out on the East End, like right behind the truck plant. So we're right there in the next, like Liquor Barn was right there. We were in the nexus of bourbon, and those were the, the heydays. You hear about the Pappies sitting on the shelf and all that. And I was not into it at all. And, just smacked myself in the head with that. But I remember a fun little story. When we came over to Clarksville in 2008, I was shopping Keg Liquors and found a 9-year Willett Family Estate black wax top. And it was like, I still have the empty bottle. It was like $69.
Okay.
So this is before, those became just scarce, like the dinosaurs. And loved it. Just a fantastic bottle. Drank through it in about, maybe a matter of, I would say 100% drank through it, but 4 or 5 months, drank it down. Knew it was something good, so I held on to it, and it probably sat with maybe about 1.5 inches left in the bottom of the bottle for like years.
Right.
Found a vintage 17 on the shelf also at Keg Liquors. So just, and again, this is before I got into bourbon, but finding that stuff, and then like now knowing what I know, like, oh my God. But it was almost like there's like an innocence that you have, right?
Right,
like
absolutely.
You don't know what you don't, like now it's like innocence lost.
Yeah, like I was telling you, when you first got here and we were talking a little bit, before we got on the air, is, the things that I drank, they were my daily drinkers, and I really didn't think nothing of it until they just started disappearing. And then, I was introduced to the secondary market, and I was like, oh God, there's a whole different world out here. So then I started hearing about other bourbons, and I started trying other bourbons and, things to that nature. And it really just shocked me at, how much I didn't know that I thought I knew. So it's definitely one of those things where it's been enlightening, I guess, over the last few years, being a part of, the Hounds and the Louisville Bourbon Club. And I'm in Tri-State now. So there's a few different ones that I sit in, and I talk with different groups and different guys. Like I've really not even had the pleasure of having as many E.H. Taylors as I would like to have. Like I've not had the seasoned barrel. Everybody says that it's magnificent, but I've never had it. So I'm kind of, still, learning the ways and the ropes as far as, what do I like and what I not like.
For me, speaking of EHT, I got onto, right off the bat, when I got into bourbon, like the barrel proof ones were the ones that just really appealed to me. I just liked that fire. I liked the heat. I liked, I'm known for putting what everyone likes to call the iceberg in my drinks. I think early on I became the Stag Junior guy. Owen, my admin counterpart, I think he attributes me to increasing the demand for Stag Junior by like a factor of 100 because I would post up so much about it. And I do love it. Like that was my go-to, put a big block of ice in the glass, dump Stag Junior over it, which because as that cube proofed it down, like it was such a game changer. I think a lot of guys like Batch 1 Stag Junior to this day still catches so much grief. Like, oh, it's pure gasoline. It's so hot. I think that folks weren't quite ready for bourbons of that high a proof.
Right.
I appreciate, I think it's Batch 9 Stag Junior that I don't necessarily care for. But beyond that, I'm a fan of all of the Stag Juniors. And, of course, the Big Daddy,
right,
George T. But it is what the ice does to it. Is a game changer, and there's a lot of guys I've converted to stagism, as it were, where man, put a block of ice in there, and they'll reply back in the groups, yeah, it's the total game changer.
To me, it really opens the caramel notes. Like
yeah.
I really start to grab some caramel and some toffee, and it just really just opens up the flavor. And Stag is my personal favorite. Like you can take every other bourbon, put it on the table. If I have the option to go for it, I'm going to go for George T. The Stag Junior is probably 4th or 5th on my list of things that I prefer to drink. So, I mean, I really understand where you're coming from on that side.
Well, and I kind of got off track with my story, but my point to that is, as I was going down that barrel proof bourbon rabbit hole, I got to try some EHT barrel proof. I was like, man, this is fantastic. And then, just like with the Stags, like you had your different batches, and the different batches were different proofs. But it became almost like overnight by the time that I got into it, just so hard to find. Like immediately it just seemed like it was a release bourbon. Like if you were going to get it, you were going to have to go camp out and wait in line at Liquor Barn or where have you. And that's how you were going to get it. Meanwhile, even though Stag Junior has kind of graduated to that now, it seemed to have a little bit more longevity to it of being able to find it on the shelf, as opposed to where EHT BP was just, it's, to me, my perception just seemed almost instantly like harder to find. And now you have like 1792 full proof when it came out. Oh my gosh, same thing.
Yep.
Start chasing that. Start chasing barrel picks of that. I think my first find of 1792 when it started being released to the wild was I was actually in Evansville, and there's a store there called Liquor Locker, and just asked about it.
Right.
Yeah, we have it.
Okay.
How is there a limit? No. Okay, I'll take a case. So I think somewhere buried in hounds, you'll see a 6-bottle crotch shot, which I basically just formed a 1792 foolproof pyramid on my crotch in the car and took the picture.
You probably saw my Stag Junior post
Yes.
a few months back.
Yes.
I happened to walk into one of my clients, and it's in the West End, so that's kind of where I frequent to find my bottles that are kind of a little bit harder to find. And I walked in there, he goes, "Man, this has been on the shelf for like a month." And I'm like, "I'll take them all." Like, there was no question asked. I didn't even ask him how much they were. But I paid a little bit more than I would have liked, but still, nonetheless, I mean, they just become that hard to find that, I immediately just grabbed them all up, and, I had 5 of them sitting in my lap and on the console and everything else. So I understand the pyramid effect in that nature.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and your tastes change over time. So, like, to your point, like, you like to have just maybe a handful of bottles open at a time and then go to the next. I can get in that mood and be the same way. It's just, unfortunately, I just will not finish the ones that are open before I move on to the next one. But I will. My pendulum can swing from, like, in barrel proofs to, oh, you know what? Now I'm going to go down the private barrel rabbit hole. Because that's a whole nother rabbit hole in itself that
Absolutely.
you can go down.
I mean, Four Roses just alone over
Right.
the last year has just been ridiculous.
Right. And that actually was the first one. And so for me, like, let's talk that. Let's talk specifically Four Roses. With theirs, it's getting enough exposure to all the different recipes so that you can find the one that you like.
Right.
That is, anyone that starts talking to me about that, that's like the first. Like, I'll give you a homework assignment. Start going and finding some Four Roses private barrels. Here's how the different recipes work. Here's kind of what you can expect with each one. Find one that you like, and then start chasing that dragon. So, like, for me, it's the OBSKs and the OESKs.
Yes.
With OESK being my top. However, there are some older OESVs that I really like. So, and I may be mistaken because I've drank a lot of bourbon since then, but the Father's Day Four Roses release, I think, was an older OESV, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds right, but I don't remember.
Which was like...
I didn't have the pleasure of having it, so I just remember seeing pictures of it. So.
It was a fantastic bottle. And actually, that was just last night. I found myself standing in front of my bourbon shelf and trying to decide what I was going to have a pour of, and I was eyeing up. There's 2 Four Roses that I have, some older OESKs, and there's probably maybe a fourth of the bottle left, if that much. And same thing, like, start to reach for it. I'm going to make it last. I'm going to make it last. Yes, there'll be other OESKs, but there won't be this one, you know, because it's that barrel or whatever. So, I got the Merle's Buffalo Trace bottle.
I did see that today. Matt Jasnoff said he got a bottle up there. He said he saw you up at Merle's.
Yeah. And same thing. Like, I got 2 1-liter bottles of it, and I was gonna crack one open tonight just to taste it. Probably still on the fence. Like, maybe I'd like to do a review, in hounds. But that starts. I don't know what you want to call that. Like, it needs an acronym. Like, there's FOMO, right?
Right.
So what is an acronym for that? When you find yourself in a stare down with one of your open bottles, and you can't, or even maybe you have one that's not open, right? And you can't bring yourself to crack it like you want to, but you're like, I don't know. Like, if I get into it, I'm gonna.
Well, see, that's my fear right there.
Right.
Like, that's always been my problem. So that's the reason I've tried to keep that. Like, hey, you've got these 4 open, drink those down, and then find the next one that you really, really got to have. or I will crack one on a special occasion. Like I was lucky enough to get 2 of the 2018 George T. Stags just recently. I walked into a Scores Liquors over off Shepherdsville Road. And I got talking to the guy, and we realized we had a lot in common. And he's like, yeah, I still had these 2 left over from last year. And I'm like, well, how much are they? And I'm like, they're $500. I'm like, well, that's why they're left over from last year. So I got talking to the guy for a little bit. And, before the end of the day, I bought both of them for $500. So I felt like, I paid way more than retail.
But
it was a
deal.
fine deal.
Yes.
So I felt comfortable about it, But when I got home, I still had oh shit, I just spent $500 on 2 bottles of bourbon, So I was like, well, what can I sell to recoup part of my money? So then I ended up getting rid of 2 bottles that I really wanted to keep, but it made my wife feel better and it made me feel a little bit better because my wife doesn't drink bourbon. So therefore, if I go a little overboard, she's like, whoa, what are you doing here?
Right. Well, so to your point, like I have my all-time favorite George T is the 2016, 144 and some change proof. Love it. So when I got at retail and went through it way too quickly, part of it was I share my bottles, so that also helped deplete it a lot. Don't share them as much as I used to. I got away from that a little bit, but I'm trying to get back to that. Just because social life just fell off, work, family, whatever.
Right.
So, but I ponied up, paid. I would call it reasonable secondary for another bottle. Drank through that. took some time, but drank through that. And again, part of it was sharing, but mostly drank through that. Then, so the third bottle that I have now, a very good bourbon friend, transcending to just good close friend, actually gave me a bottle, and so now I'm about halfway through that bottle. Again, that's probably 50-50 sharing.
Should we give you
drinking.
A nipple so that won't last a little longer?
My blood type is GTS. That's my blood type. Excuse me, or maybe a Stag Junior. But that's kind of the thing that the process that's playing out in my head as I'm going there trying to decide what to get into, and saying all this and realizing what a little spoiled bourbon brat I must sound like, said, oh, I just have all these just amazing, which it would surprise people how unamazing my bunker and my collection really. Like I have a few nice bottles and a few dusties, but there are guys out there that they let you take a peek at your bunker and it's rows deep of gold veins and Four Roses limited edition small batches and dusties and all sorts of amazing bottles. So I think that's something that would surprise folks. Like my bunker doesn't necessarily go as deep. There's a lot of, I'll admit it, there's a lot of tater bottles. I'm fine with that. Some of them are good bottles. God, good Lord, I've gone down a New Riff private barrel rabbit hole like mad. I'm such a fan of New Riff, really.
So, I don't know if you listened to episode 3 or not, but Matt, he talked about...
I'm up to 2. I've
okay,
not got to 3 yet.
So episode 3, Matt talks all about the New Riff process. So I guess he went there with one of the local stores, and they went through and did a tasting, and he was, going through it. And I told him, I said, New Riff has just really impressed me with what they've been able to accomplish on a 4-year bourbon. Because I do like, fuller proof. I like, aged bourbon. But I really feel like their 4-year picks are just unbelievable. The full proof 1792 you're pouring right now, that to me, I really like it. I was impressed whenever I tried it at the wine rack, so that's the reason I picked up a bottle of it. And hopefully you'll like it as much as I do. So speaking of, going on a store pick, that type of thing, I would really like to, get your insight on that, because I think that's something that most people have never had the privilege of doing, and kind of tell us about the process. What was your favorite one, and, what are the ins and outs of doing that?
Certainly. So I have a lot of fun on pretty much any of them that I go to. Some of them we may get up to more antics than others. I've been very blessed to be able to go on several. I've been able to do Four Roses multiple times. I've been able to do Buffalo Trace multiple times. Been able to do 1792, New Riff, Wild Turkey. Am I leaving anyone out? We've done some that have not been at the distillery. They've been like samples at the store.
Gotcha.
So there's been that as well. Heaven Hill, done a Heaven Hill, Elijah Craig. Trying to think if I've left any out. We did it. We did a Blanton straight from the barrel, which
we're going to be sampling later.
Yes, I did bring the Hounds Blanton straight from the barrel, and I'm using air quotes that, of course, the folks at home can't see, but private barrel. So we had a lot of shenanigans with that. Created a lot of feels in the bourbon world. So we'll just move past that. But anyhow, it is a good Blanton, very good Blanton straight from the barrel. And no hounds were harmed in the picking of said barrel. So we'll leave it at that. But so one story that comes to mind as far as barrel picks would be, went with a group down to, I've done Willet also. It just popped in my head. I also gotten to do Willet. Went with a group down to Barton's, and we did a 1792 foolproof pick. And after the pick was done, we went to Mammy's for lunch. And if you're in Bardstown, definitely go to Mammy's.
Absolutely.
It's not the most keto-friendly place in the world,
No.
Which at the time wasn't a concern of mine, but very legit chicken and waffles, very legit. So maybe you can get some kickback from Mammy's for now having advertised them on your podcast. This podcast sponsored by Mammy's. So
home of the chicken and waffle.
Right. So we went. One of our group had a little too much. We did sample 10 barrels.
10 barrels.
And so he made it out of the car. He was not driving, by the way. We were responsible. We had a designated driver, and he got out, and immediately just all that bourbon came back up right there in the parking lot. Well, at the same time, Bardstown PD was rolling through the parking lot. And so they stopped and is he okay? You know, what's going on? Oh, we went first. No, he's not driving. But second, we just came from Barton's. We did a barrel pick, and he's had a little too much, but he's not driving. We're okay, and all that. And so they went on their merry way. But he was wrecked. There was texts and phone calls to coordinate pickup from wife, and all the fallout he had to face from the wife. That it was 11:30 or noon on like a Tuesday, and he was wasted, and so that was a good time. I always have fun trying to crotch shot interesting things while on barrel picks. It's always fun to crotch shot an entire barrel. That's always fun. The last pick I went on, I won't say the name, but with a large chain liquor store in the Louisville, Kentucky area, that I went on a barrel pick with them in Buffalo Trace. I think there's a very infamous picture of me crotch shotting a barrel thief, putting it in a very interesting position as to look like I'm endowed with a copper thief, as it were. So just it's fun to have. It's good to have fun like that.
So how was the Weller foolproof pick? I know that you went on one recently.
We did.
To do
we
that.
did. So it's kind of anticlimactic, and I hate to say that because I know a lot of people have Weller foolproof built up in their heads. But like when you go and you do a Buffalo Trace barrel pick, you're sampling Weller at foolproof. So they will give you a row of glasses of the Weller, straight from the barrel, as it were, not proofed down, and then another row of glasses where they've proofed it down. And so just to like walk you through Buffalo Trace's process, so they have glasses, and there are lines marked on the glass, and so they will fill it up so full with bourbon, and then they will fill it up to the next line with water, and that kind of roundabout proofs it. as I've gone on more barrel picks at Buffalo Trace, that process has changed a little bit. They are now breaking out a hydrometer and actually kind of checking the proofs. But you get that, like, when we go with that large chain store I was talking about, like, they will go and you're not just picking Weller, you're picking Weller and Blanton's and Buffalo Trace and maybe a Hancock's and all, a plethora of barrels. Like the last pick that I went on was 27 different barrels.
So all right. So you're getting probably a half ounce pour with every one of those, roughly.
Honestly, you more or less get as much as you want. So like Buffalo Trace, there's rows of glasses, 2 rows of glasses set up from each barrel. Some are barrel strength, and then the others are proof down. And there's not necessarily enough glasses for everyone, so you're kind of sharing the glass or whatever. But there's never not been enough bourbon to sample, and you weren't limited to the pour that you had, at least as far as I could tell. Right.
But 26 taste, I mean, that's got to put a hurting on your normal man.
It does. I mean, I feel like I have a good tolerance from all the barrel proof stuff that I imbibe, but it was daunting. My tongue, my mouth was numb.
Can you really taste the difference at the end by that point?
Oh, no. Hell no. No.
So the first probably 4 or 5 barrels you picked are probably pretty good.
Yes. So I'm being coy, but the store was Liquor Barn. So Brad Williams was there from Liquor Barn. And it's good to see that like my palate aligns a lot with his. Like we tend to agree on most of the barrels. Not that it matters, because he has ultimate say, and I'm just happy to be along and picking the barrels. But our palates do usually align, or maybe the one he chose, and maybe one that I chose as my second place barrel per se. And that's part of the barrel pick process. Like there may be someone that's kind of the ultimate deciders of the barrel pick. So don't get too bent out of shape if your horse didn't come in, as they say, for the barrel that you liked. Because it's all about the experience. Now with like a smaller group, like Hounds, with our barrel pick that we have coming up for New Riff, so we will go. If Owen's tagging along, then like we will be the kind of the deciding factors on it. That one's going through Liquor World, and same thing, Bill Durham with Liquor World. Our palates usually align
pretty closely.
Yes, and that's another store that I've been able to go on a lot of picks through. So that's good. And gosh, like the last New Riff we picked, that was a fun pick. The Hounds New Riff pick that we did. We went there, we sampled 5 or 6 different barrels, and then we were like, can we try another one? And we actually said, you pick it this time. So they picked it, and we tasted it, and it was like, oh, like this is great. And by that time we were feeling good, and we said, you know what? Can we get more than one barrel? And I know some of the corporate New Riff folks pretty well, because we got in at the beginning with them, and it was, you can have second barrel. Awesome. Okay, and I really hope that happens again this time. Like, fingers crossed. Maybe not, but that would be fantastic if it happened. They're very generous with their private barrels. Theirs is a unique process. Like, you go into New Riff, you're gonna, a lot of times, like, you go, the barrels are picked out, you thieve the barrels, and then you taste them, and on you go. With New Riff, you walk in. First of all, you're not their distillery. You're at their other site, which is where their rick house is, and their bottling line and all that. And so you go, and they have a really cool room where you do your tasting at. But you walk in to a big open area, and they have the barrels laid out, and they have tasting. They have like a sheet that they give you of the tasting notes on there, which is really neat. And people have different schools of thoughts when they're doing barrel picks. Like some people, like I don't want to know anything about the barrel. Don't tell me the age. Don't tell me where it was. Don't tell me the proof. I just want to taste it, and then go from there. So we've had some people in our group that just they didn't even want to look at the tasting notes. They didn't want to be influenced in some way. But so basically, their process is you're supposed to just kind of look at those sheets and then decide based on that which X number of barrels, let's say 5, that you want to sample. And then it can work either way. You might be able to thieve, or they'll thieve them for you, fill up 375 ml bottles, bring them in, and you'll go through and taste them. And if you need to go do another run through, or maybe you come down to your top 3 and we want to go do another run through, that's fine. They'll do that. Wild turkey, you will go that. I'm glad I said wild turkey. That just popped a memory in my head of what I would say is probably my favorite barrel pick of all time. We went and did a wild turkey barrel pick on a Friday. Jimmy was our, Jimmy was our tour guide. And we get into the rick house, and there was already 8 barrels that we sampled. And someone said, hey, we hear you got, I'm sorry, not Jimmy, Eddie. I'm getting my Russells confused. But anyhow, so we hear you got a rye barrel rolled away in here. Oh, you guys wouldn't want any of that. Oh yeah, we would. So we go through the labyrinth of the rick house, go up to this rye barrel where you can see little pokes had been made in the side of the rye barrel. He makes another poke, and a little spring of rye bourbon or rye whiskey starts flowing out, and we fill up a Glencairn full of it, and then we all pass it around or sampling. It was awesome. And then Eddie is, and like at the beginning of the pick, his face was just beet red. So I had wondered if he just had like bourbon in his Wheaties that morning, And even when he showed up he has this really nice Harley that he drives, and he rolled up to the visitor center in it, which was just, it was interesting seeing him on that Harley, because he had like the hard side saddle bags on it, color matched anyhow. But we're in there. We did the tour. We've been sampling the barrels, and then and he just was letting it all hang out. He's like, what the? He's like, F it, it's Friday. I know it's like 11:30 on Friday, but we're here. We're drinking bourbon. Does it get any better than this? We're feeling good. You want me to pull 3 more barrels off the rick? Hell yes, we want you to pull 3 more barrels off the rick. Twist our arms. And I mean, he runs over and gets the I don't know what you call it, but it's a big hydraulic spring-loaded thing that raises up, and you roll the barrel on and lifts it down. And he's just, he manhandled that thing. He was doing work. Put that thing up there, pulled 3 barrels off. We popped the bungs on them, sampled 3 more barrels. And it just seemed real. You were just hanging out with Eddie Russell, just randomly just breaking open barrels off the rick and tasting them. And we walked away with a great Russell's Reserve that day, but that was really a great pick. But that's the thing, you're in the rick house doing it, and there's others like 1792. You might sample at the visitor center, or you might go in the rick house and do it. Buffalo Trace is in the rick house. 4 Roses, you're going to go to Cox's Creek and do it, and they have their tasting room there.
So have you done one with Al Young?
I did not get to do one with Al Young. Hounds did a 4 Roses pick, and Al Young was on that pick, but I was not able to go to that. But no, I've gotten to spend some quality time with Al, but not on a barrel pick, unfortunately.
So back when I worked with Mercy Academy, I sat on their board of directors there for quite a few years. Al would come over and do a private tasting for our benefit off Broadway every single year. He'd come in and he'd bring probably 20 bottles of bourbon, and, as many people that wanted to drink until the bourbon was gone. He was like, here, just keep drinking, people. So Al was a great guy, and we really always had a really good time with Al, and always really appreciated his generosity to want to come out and help a nonprofit or a school in that situation. So What do you think about the 1792 foolproof, the wine rack pick there?
I like this. There's a lot of for me, brown sugar action going on. It's a nice, warm, sweety kind of bourbon. It really is. Yeah, I don't need no iceberg for this. This is good.
No, it was really good.
Yeah,
I tried it with the iceberg because I wanted to see what the difference
Mm-hmm.
was. But I'm like you. I think just the way it was just perfectly good. I think they did a phenomenal job on that pick. When we went over to the store and I tried it, like I said before I bought the bottle, I was like, man, this is really good. And then got this bottle. We opened it today, and I poured a glass, and I was like, I still hadn't tried it with ice, so I went ahead and threw a little on the ice just to see what the difference was. But it's actually way better neat than what it was with the ice.
There are some barrel strength 1792 is fantastic. It's been maybe a weekish ago now. I got to do a barrel pick down there, and I actually have a sample of it at the house. You'll have to come by and try some. 133.6 proof, 1792. So your full proof's proof down to 125. But cotton candy, man.
Really?
It is like cotton candy. Yeah. I probably should have said anything. Now you're gonna be influenced. You're gonna come and try it, and you're gonna be tasting. I don't get the cotton candy, but no. For me, it was like bubble gum or cotton candy or something like that.
So it had like a really sweet.
Really sweet. Yes.
So the 1792 sweet wheats, the one that I've had of those, have been really, really, really sweet, and I can kind of get where you would get that idea. But the full proof or the barrel, whatever those are, that's one of the better ones that I've actually had.
This is very good.
So
yeah,
I'm gonna pour a little bit of this Blanton's, or do you want to pour it for me? So
help yourself, sir. You feel free to have a healthy pour.
The in quotations Louisville Bourbon Hounds single barrel, straight from the barrel Blanton's pick. All right. Go ahead and tell us a little bit more about one of the picks while I pour this, so that we don't have too much dead air.
Certainly. So the the foolproof pick that you had asked about, actually, I would say probably there was more of a craze for the non-chill filtered Old Wellers than maybe the foolproofs. Like I feel the foolproof, if there's a foolproof craze, I feel like maybe it's fueled by the perceived secondary value of those, especially the private barrel ones. But when Buffalo Trace decided they were not going to chill filter Old Weller Antique, I think that's there's a lot of I was very excited about that, because I do feel like you can definitely taste a difference between a chill filtered and a non-chill filtered bourbon. To me, it's more viscous. It's a viscous. Let's say that word. Oily, more meaty. There's just more of a substance to it.
It sits on the rim of the glass. Like when you swish it around, you can kind of see the viscosity.
Or just even it clings to the tongue, all that.
Right.
So, and I can remember probably the first private barrel non-chill filtered Old Weller that I remember is one that Larry Rice and his team did at the Silver Dollar. And so it was an old label, Old Weller, and it was non-chill filtered. And managed to get one of those whenever he had a release out of the Pearl. And just a delicious bottle. So then it wasn't too long after that Buffalo Trace opened up their private barrel program for the Old Weller to have the non-chill filtered option. But people didn't necessarily know about that yet, that it was an option, because so I believe, and if a listener hears this and needs to correct me if I'm wrong, go right ahead. But so I believe that I actually did the first store pick non-chill filtered Old Weller Antique, and it would have been either Get in Line or Baby New Year. I can't remember which one came first. I think it was Get in line. No, I'm losing my mind now.
So what year would that have
But
been?
that would have been,
Like
gosh,
2016?
no, it would have been later than that. 18?
18?
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't
So-
remember when they started that.
I think
Seemed like it was longer
what's
than
clouding
18.
my memory is Baby New Year, I think, was just the first one of like 2018 because it was like January 2nd or 3rd that we picked it, and it was so cold. Like there was frost on the inside of the windows when we picked it. So I believe Get in Line might have been one of the first ones to roll out. And when we were there picking it, that was one we did with Liquor World. It was actually Liquor World's pick. And we're there and we're picking it, and I'm like, so can we get this non-chill filtered? Which was funny because the Liquor World crew were just like, is that a thing? Can we even get that? And so Susie, she is awesome. She runs the if you go on a barrel pick, she's the one that Susanna is the one that's running the show while you're there on the barrel pick, and she is as smart as they come, knows her stuff, knows a lot of stuff about the science of bourbon, and so she's like, yeah, you can. That's definitely a thing you can do. And, oh my God, like taters are gonna tate. People are gonna love this. So, and actually, the story behind Get in Line was several months back. Liquor World had done a release, like they announced the release on Facebook where they played it up, and people are like, it's gonna be Pappy. It's got to be Pappy. And people waited in line. I was one of the ones that was in line and waiting for it. And then in the morning, probably the best bottles that were released were some of their old label Old Weller Antiques. And folks were like, what? Like I stayed in line all night which that's a thing that happens nowadays. Like people be like, yeah, I'll stay in line for a private barrel Old Weller all day long. But think of the time. This is like 2016-ish, 2017-ish. So there was a lot of people needed to write some things in their feelings journals because of that. So when we did the barrel pick, I was like, I know exactly what you need to name this. Get in line. Just as a little zing, to some of the folks that are just like, why were we waiting in line for OWA? But I believe that was if it wasn't the first, it was among some of the first non-chill filtered Wellers. But yeah, just that was such a nuance. And people didn't, and then once it kind of, because you immediately saw it, like in the secondary groups, anytime somebody saw a private barrel pick, is this non-chill filtered? Can you verify this? People were emailing Buffalo Trace or calling their 1-800 bourbon line or whatever it is they got, just trying to verify if a store pick was non-chill filtered. Do you have verification from the owner? I want owner verification that this is. Were you on the barrel pick? Because that meant something to people. That was a much larger craze than I think than Foolproof. So yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. What Foolproof is really just OWA, just a little hotter, right?
Right. Really, you're probably talking like maybe 7 proof points higher.
Right.
Like it's not a whole lot hotter at barrel proof. So, and you're especially...
And it's still watered down, right? I mean, it's probably coming out of the barrel
correct.
at 130.
Correct. And not necessarily. No. They're usually not... I mean, you're talking about, especially now, you're talking about a 6-7 year... Maybe if you're lucky, 8-year bourbon, maybe. But I want to say that you're looking average around 7 years. So not super hot, unadulterated from the barrel. I think you would do good to even approach 120, just straight barrel proof Old Weller. So you're getting a few more proof points, and I've seen some chatter in the group. So people are losing their minds for a few more proof points higher. And I don't know, the full proofs that I've tried are they're okay. It's not like this is something I would totally tater up for and start chasing or anything. Like, it's a great bottle. I will enjoy it. Like, when, Lord, please let the Hounds Foolproof get bottled already. I don't know when we're going to see that. I
hope I'm lucky enough to get one of those bottles.
It shouldn't be too hard for folks to get on that. This one, so the Hounds Foolproof is probably more store controlled than our other barrel picks, just because of what it is. So for that reason, this one you won't see a Google Sheets order form to do it like you see with the other Bourbon Hounds barrel picks. I'm advocating this as a straight release. I love camping out for bottles. Used to do that a lot. Really got away from that just because of life. But I would love to see this be a genuine release. And I've even been on, like, I've tried to advocate to Liquor World, even to Liquor Barn, like, hey, enough of this raffle stuff. We need one good old fashioned, Pappy or BTAC release. Yes, there's going to be line shenanigans, and yeah, you're probably going to, even with the raffles, though, you get this. You're going to get emails and people upset or whatever because they feel like stores should police what people do with their bottles after the fact. But it would be nice to just one time have a genuine, good old fashioned release. So for that reason, I hope that, and I feel like that's probably the way it's going to go. Like, it's just going to be an announced release. Hey, releasing at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We'll have X number of bottles. Blah blah blah, and just do it that way. But yeah, because it's foolproof, it's a different animal.
Yeah, people will definitely be camping out for that bottle, I'm sure.
I'll be camping out for that bottle. I like it. So
right. So the foolproofs that I've had, I thought were really good. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering why more places don't offer a foolproof option. Like Old Forester really comes to mind in that situation. Like Honeycomb that was picked by the OBC recently, great bottle. Drank it, I've been enjoying it. But I really wish that you could get something at barrel strength or closer to barrel strength than, your standard 93, 94 proof.
I am in that same boat with you, sir. So I of course you definitely get more yield if you proof it down, right?
Right.
But
don't you think they could charge a premium for a full proof versus a?
I feel like a true private barrel program should be highly customizable. Like, you can, if you just want it straight from the barrel, you can do that. If you want it proof down, you can do that. Even if you want it in liter bottles, if you want it in pints or 100 mils, if you want to mix, if you want to get some cute little 50 mil airline bottles, things like that. Which, again, like distilleries don't do that, but it'd be fun, right?
No, absolutely, and it's actually an amazing idea, really, because it gives more people the opportunity to at least get a try of it, right? Not everybody's going to be generous enough to say, "Hey, I got this 1792 pick, man. I'm more than willing to crack it open. Anybody that wants to just come on over and have a sip."
Right.
Some people are very hoardy, that's one of the reasons. Like, I love guys like you, and Q's been a great guy. Like, every time I run into Q, I mean, he's literally got 6 or 7 bottles on him, and he's like, "Try this."
He is the real deal. He at his. Have you been to his house for a tasting?
I've not been to his house yet. I did get an invite last month, but I just happened to be going to a charity event that night, so I was kind of upset. I almost was like, "Becky, can I skip this event tonight?"
I'm just gonna say it's an experience. He puts a lot of time and effort into planning out those tastings, and you could not encounter a more just real, authentic, genuine kind of guy. He's a good guy. So I was a little bit hesitant at first when he reached out, and wanted me to come by for a tasting, but he'll offer you some options, and you'll go by, and it's a good experience. It really is. So you get a chance to schedule one with him. It's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I want to get to that point where I have enough bottles that and I get out of my 3 or 4 bottle scenario where I can get 8 or 10 or 12 bottles open and be like, "Hey, 10, 15 guys, come on over, have a little sample, tell me what
Definitely.
you think. And then and I think that will help me get out of my stagnant stage of where I'm at. So we're running up close to about 50 minutes, so it's been a great conversation. I always like to end all of my conversations with whoever our guest is with one or two either weird or funny questions. So we've discussed neating on the rocks and things like that. So I'm going to go with you on what's the craziest thing you've done while being inebriated?
I'm going to have to think a little bit on that. The craziest thing that I've done while being inebriated. So let's take it back to my 21st birthday.
Okay, wow, we're going way back.
That's right in the before times. So I was going to college and still lived at home. And so my folks actually rented me a limousine for my 21st birthday. So me and my very best friend, and I won't drop that person's name, and he probably won't hear this because he doesn't do bourbon, and he lives on the other side of the state, and he would have crawled under a rock if I told the story again. But anyhow, so we were in the limousine and having our night of drunken debauchery. There was a group of us that actually had gone out in the limousine, and the night was wrapping up, and it was probably 4 or 5 in the morning, and we're heading back. And this is when I lived in Evansville,
Diamond Lane.
So we're on Green River Road, and if any fellow Hoosiers out there know Evansville, this was back in the day when Green River Road is where you cruised. So we're coming down Green River Road, and there's a car next to us with some pretty young ladies in it, and I am doing the stereotypical, standing up, head torso outside of the sunroof in the limo. See the pretty ladies, like, hey, y'all want to go for a ride in the limousine? And they're like, sure. Okay, so we pulled over in the mall parking lot. Good old Eastland Mall in Evansville, and so they got into the car. And our limo driver's name was Gene. And Gene, he rolled down that partition window between you and him, and he's like, what should I do? We're like, I don't know. Just drive, Gene, just drive. So he drove. He took the 164 wasn't even a thing there, so he probably just went like Diamond Avenue, went out on north side and west side, and came back up the Lloyd Expressway back to the east side. I don't know. He did the loop, whatever the loop around Evansville is. But we were we didn't know these young ladies from anybody, but we were feeling good, and I don't know if they were feeling good or not, but there was a lot of physical contact that occurred in the limousine while try to keep this. We'll keep no worse than PG-13, but anyhow, so as we were doing the loop, and so we get back, and Gene stops the limo back at Eastland Mall where the young lady's car was, and so we're kind of sitting there in the car, still having like a heavy makeout session, as it were, and all of a sudden, I just feel it come upon me. I got puke. It's the alcohol's coming up. I got to puke, and so my friend must have seen the physical distress that I was in, trying to hold it back, and it was like in slow mo. Like he's like, "Not in the limo, not in the limo," to me it was coming off like, "Not in the limo," and so hand over mouth. Tried to keep it. I got the door open, roll out the side of the door, and just cut loose in the mall parking lot there. Just cut loose. And all I can remember is just looking up at the wheel of the car of the girls that were in the limo, and I just see them like burning out, leaving. And I closed the door, and I'm like, man, we were just so messed up. And we like high five and whatever. And that's probably the craziest, I would say.
We had a similar night to that, and I've been trying to cover some of my favorite ones over the course of this, but I think it was for Dave Mull's 21st birthday. We all went to a bar, and we were hanging out at Bar Louisville. I don't know if you remember Bar Louisville or not.
Yeah.
So we all go in. Toby actually stays in the limousine, and he's drinking, I think, Crown and Coke or something. I honestly don't know. And we go in, and I get thrown out of the bar within like 6 minutes because my buddy Mike starts hitting girls on the butt on the stage, and they thought it was me. So they reported me. The bouncer comes over, throws me out. So I go outside, and I had one of those big fruit punch bowls full of alcohol that we were sharing with a couple of us. And I get out to the car, and Toby's already half wasted because he'd just been sitting out there by himself in the limo drinking whatever he was drinking. So I get in there with him, and we polish off the rest of the bottle of Crown, and then we drank some vodka and then some rum, and then so we drank some bourbon. And before I knew it, I mean, I was just completely just smashed. I mean, and we were hanging out the roof, rolling up and down Bardstown Road, screaming obscenities and everything else. So that was one of my favorite nights of drunken tomfoolery, I will say. So, well, Craig, it's been a pleasure having you on. I really appreciate you coming on to the show. If you want to ask any questions or anything like that for the audience, you can email us at bourbonbarreltalk@gmail.com, or you can visit us on the Facebook page and send us a direct message. Thanks again, Craig, for coming out.
Certainly. Thank you, sir.
All right. Signing off on Bourbon Barrel Talk, episode